Adesso è il momento di Errol Gradwell, amministratore delegato dell'Agenzia per la Formazione Nazionale dell'Energia del settore delle acque della Repubblica del Sudafrica. Noi abbiamo come Emilia Romagna un accordo internazionale di collaborazione con la regione del Gauteng in Sudafrica, che è una delle regioni più sviluppate, e sappiamo che la Repubblica del Sudafrica ha un accordo molto importante con il nostro Ministero dell'Ambiente proprio sui temi dell'acqua. Noi abbiamo un progetto che intendiamo sottoporre al nostro Ministero di collaborazione proprio su questo. Con il suo intervento oggi, Acqua e Democrazia in Africa, Errol ci parlerà dell'importanza sociale e politica che l'acqua ha avuto e ha tuttora in Sudafrica e per tutta la regione subsahariana. Attraverso la descrizione dei temi di una corretta governance della materia, utilizzando inoltre alcuni casi di studio, ci darà uno spaccato di come sia fondamentale una corretta regolazione legislativa di questo delicato ambito per garantire equità sociale e pari opportunità di sviluppo. Thank you, Errol. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Madam Moderator, for giving me this opportunity. Our thanks goes to the organizers of this very august event. And it's really indeed for us a privilege to be part of this engagement during this time. I must say that my visit to Italy this week comes as part of the agreements that has been signed between our governments, South African government and the Italian government, the Emilia-Romagna region and the Gauteng region, the city of Curleni and Florence. And in one day we had about 5 engagements in the same place in 2016 during October, whereby we have indeed cemented our relationship with Italy. And so we then thought, given the few visits over the last 4 years and the bilateral agreements, we have launched what we refer to as Green Action Platform. And in terms of that platform, we have collaboration partnerships at ministerial level, which we refer to as institutional. We do the research and development side, which is the second leg, with universities and institutions of research. And then the third one is more about scientific exchange and know-how for industry purposes. And so we have briefed the Italian ambassador 2 weeks ago in South Africa, and this week, on Wednesday morning, we briefed the South African ambassador to Italy on progress, because the purpose is really for us to start to engage and do justice to those bilateral agreements, to put traction and oxygen into the documentation. My presence here is really, I'm so encouraged when I listen to you, Brian. And you presented high-level and in-depth data. But when we came to the solutions, it was yet simple and powerful. And I'm taking them all back because I know you want to hear about Cape Town as well. The topic on water and democracy and African perspective, and moderator, ma'am, I know you said time is out, so I'm going to cut it from half an hour to 10 minutes, right? Just briefly a story. Just prior to 1994, when we got our democracy and freedom as a nation, we had a different sets of development agencies coming in, doing development work in our communities that were really disadvantaged and impoverished. And one of the major industrial countries in the world came with their development agency and did some work in the more impoverished communities. And so the work that was done, they built a swimming pool there, and they built a tennis court. A year after that, they came back and we were having lunch at my house, and he says, I can't understand. We came here all the way from our country. We invested in this community, built a swimming pool, and built what we refer to a elaborate tennis court. Well, when we came back, the water was gone out of the swimming pool. The infrastructure, the poles and the nets, everything of the tennis court was gone. What do these people want? And I had to say to him, you know what? At times it helps if you go and ask the question first, what do these people need? And then you service their needs. Because what you have observed now, and this is the punchline for my presentation, is democracy's got rights to access, but also responsibilities. And so that's what I would like to look at. Because in times when it's really dangerous and crisis and critical, that's when you need people and to call on people's responsibilities to assist you. So, if I can get my bearings right here, quickly just to say that we will focus on freshwater governance use and challenges in Africa, case studies of Zimbabwe and Tanzania, and then we will go to South Africa quickly and see what is happening there in this regard and where we are and in what ways are we trying to address these challenges. I will conclude by wrapping it up very, very quickly. But as I said, I want to do justice to your request in terms of time. Fortunately, my presentation is text heavy. So I can just fly through it and you can read the rest. And so for me, first of all, these are the realities of Africa. Because the water basins, rivers run through different countries, you are bound to have stress and therefore conflicts. The lack of adequate water and sanitation infrastructure, especially after conflict situations in societies, either demolishes or make it difficult to establish proper infrastructure in those areas. And then, of course, there's the high population growth. And in some areas like Djibouti and so forth, we have experienced serious growth, which in turn brings then pressure on your urban infrastructure. And so these are the challenges and the realities that we are faced with on the continent. I've deliberately put only one picture in my whole slide, and that is the picture of this woman who fetches water in a bucket. That's the reality of Africa. For the most part, yes, we have our nice Johannesburgs and our nice Nairobis, Cape Towns and so forth, where tapped water, clean water is readily available. But in the bigger scheme of things, when you look at the masses, that's the realities of Africa. Some of our case studies now will reflect that some of the governments has not been always sensitive to some of these issues. Because you must remember historically, water belonged to those who owned land. And it was for the most part those who owned land at a specific time in our history that were the colonists, the imperialists, and so forth, that now had automatically access to water. And that is what we refer to as our riparian ownership. In Zimbabwe, in 1995 to 2000, they made a concerted effort to come up with a framework to address the inequalities of water use within the country. Furthermore, these policies that they came up with was aimed at two things. One, it's done through the issuing of renewable permits. So nobody could sit with a water permit or a water right for ad infinitum, forever. It's renewable. And secondly, because of the flexible system, it will ensure that the government is able to redistribute in terms of access to where the challenges and the needs exist the most. Well, the advice that has been given to the government of Zimbabwe is that the time has come to devolve and decentralize the not only policy and legislation framework, but also the fact where is the water managed, where is it catched, and who takes responsibility for what. They established 7 catchment councils, and reporting to the catchment councils is your sub-catchment councils within the context of Zimbabwe. But typically African country, that ZINWA means that Zimbabwe National Water Authority. They were quite intimidated by the fact that they need to devolve powers too far down and lack, or rather had to cede the authority and responsibility in that regard. So in South Africa, we talk about CMAs, catchment management areas. That's what we embrace, and I'll say more about that just now. But these councils in Zimbabwe, right, safeguard users' equitable access to and sustainable management of the water resources. Just to fly through that one, Madam Moderator, the participatory practice of the model of the Zimbabweans did not embrace participation very, very strongly. But we are in a space now whereby enough pressure has been placed on the Zimbabwean government, because you have the European Union and we have the African Union. And we've established as a subcommittee under the African Union what we refer to as the Africa Ministers' Council on Water. And through that structure, the African Union is in a position to put pressure on governments to devolve, to get communities to participate, and to make sure ownership is properly distributed. These are the challenges within the context of Tanzania, for instance. Problems with the implementation of the legislation, much as they have succeeded in putting together good policies, they still have implementation and practical challenges in this regard. To use one basin, the refugee basin, in terms of government structures again, policies are in place. From a national level, they try their best to put, and I must say to you that your Tanzanian model and experience and progress is much more advanced than that of the Zimbabwean one in terms of decentralization and participation and so forth. I want to haste to go to the South African experience at this stage. I hope I've got still some left of my 10 minutes, ma'am. Pre-1998, because that's the year then Nelson Mandela made a drastic call on the Ministry of Water and Sanitation to turn around the water sector from what we refer to as legislation emphasized riparian ownership and commercially based control of water, single sector, not integrated, but single sector, centralized delivery-oriented management, non-participatory water resource management, and here was the reality. Separate development, which resulted in 35% of South Africans had no access to basic water supply services, and 53% lived without proper sanitation, right? So that was the scenario prior to 1998. Now, when we democratized our country and we came forth with democracy, unfortunately for water, they could not be spared. We then had to deal with, and for those of you who understand and know the history of South Africa, you may find that this is where things really started to happen for us. When the democracy took over, when Nelson Mandela came with his government in 1994, things started to change. Things were so bad that in terms of the 1913 Land Act, all land, 15% belonged to 80% of the people, and 85% of the land belonged to 20% of the population. So that was the scenario at the time. Here comes Mr. Mandela, and he says, right, in contrast to the National Water Act of 1998, right, this act now recognizes water as a public resource. It is no more owned by the haves and the have-nots. It's no more owned by the industrialists and the farmers who could afford land, but it's now a public resource. Water now has to be protected and used so that the interest of society at large must be served. Various reforms were initiated post-1994 to eradicate those historic challenges and addressing water scarcity, resulting in two major acts. One, the Water Services Act of 1997, and two, the National Water Act of 1998. The National Water Act explicitly sets up the national government as the custodian of all water resources. Hence the model previously of Zimbabwe, that you need to reissue, reapply, redistribute the resource itself to reach everybody. The management approach of us was one of integration. The implementing integrated water resource management requires a change to sector-integrated, locally focused management, which incorporates the interest of diverse stakeholders. Now, here's the punchline. Water resource management and participatory water resources management are inseparable. So for us, at this point, water needs to be managed by all of us. Much as it has to be used and accessed by all of us, so it has to be managed by all of us on the continent. And in the last week, 2 weeks, I've been in 4 continents. Yeah, yes, I know you feel sorry for me. But in every hotel I was, and in every restaurant, or even at the airport where I tried to wash my hands, I found at least one basin that could not close properly and leaked water. In the morning when you want to shave, you don't know how to do it. So I used to take the cap of my shaving gel and take it off and put it in the plug there and let the water run, and if there's enough pressure, then I can shave. It happened in our continent. I saw it in your continent. I saw it in India, and I saw it in the Middle East. We have only 1% of really usable water in the globe. And so the issue of democracy is not only a matter of access to water, the right, but it's also about the responsibility to care for this water resource. And I think I'm going to stop there, ma'am. Otherwise, if I go in that direction, I may say more. But it's wonderful for us to be here and to participate with you. The resources that are coming out here, information sharing, is definitely going to assist us. Quickly, something about Cape Town. Cape Town is in dire need of rain. You said we can't make water. You're so right. Our challenge, and I think the major reason why Cape Town is experiencing some serious challenges at this stage is, first of all, let me just say, El Nino of 2014 and the 5-year drought of 2011 to 12 in the east of Africa did not do all of us a lot of good. So we're suffering the effects still of that. But closer home, I think a few things need to be mentioned about the Cape Town situation. And let me say that why I liked your inputs of the 3 simple steps. It's because that's exactly where we are and what we're doing at this stage, from national government level, provincial, as well as a local government level. The key is, in Cape Town, the over-reliance on surface water, and we all know our surface water sources are getting depleted, is a real challenge. But secondly, the lack of planning to harvest rainwater, the lack of being able to utilize the surface water, groundwater. And therefore, concomitant to that, because of the serious ocean and sea coast belt that the Western Cape has, for the first time this year, they consider desalination. I should say last year. And so there are those options and those opportunities that we are looking at and that we are embarking on. Problem is, in the case of energy, not so long ago, we had some serious energy outages because we thought we are short of energy, only to discover that we've been spoiled. We had oversupply of energy. We could even export and sell energy to African countries. But, simple example, I sit in front of the television and my son goes upstairs and he leaves all the lights on and they come back, opens the fridge door, and the sensitivity in terms of working with the resource sparingly had to be communicated. Our nation had to be educated and consistently reinforced. Because of that scenario you painted here of the water, we never had outages in the last 3 years. Because we all of a sudden realized with discipline and with the right attitude towards the resource, we managed to manage our resource. And now we have an abundance again. And so it's a simple thing. Democracy in water is about rights and responsibilities. Thanks, ma'am.